Hi, and welcome back to India on 99.94, the home of cricket audio. I'm Nikesh Rugani, the host for this particular podcast on our 99.94 network, commentator based in the UK. My co host, Sarah Waris of Wisden in India, will be here several times a week, of course, as always. And do check out the 99.94 app. Sarah, not long since we last spoke, we were talking about the woes of the Indian women's team who are in action tonight as we record this podcast against England in the second T20 International. We're going to stick to the T20 theme as well. How was your evening last night as well? Because the Indian squad got announced not quite as
Yeah.
late as you were expecting, before dinner time, in fact. So your dinner plans weren't affected, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I logged out at my normal time. Cheers to BCCI for that for once. So yeah,
Yeah, send them a thank you card on your behalf. So the squad has been announced. There were lots of rumours, weren't there? We've talked about this a lot on this podcast about various combinations that they could go into the T20 World Cup with. Even before the Asia Cup, we were talking about this particular tournament and looking at various players who might make it in, combinations they'll probably go with the batting, the bowling, and the all-rounder slots. The absence of Jadeja, of course, through injury. And all in all, I wouldn't say underwhelming. It's there's lots of good players on show there, but it's
yeah,
predictable, isn't it? They've gone down the tried and tested route, and there's no real surprises in there, are there?
yeah. Probably the only debate in terms of selection was Bishnoi and Ashwin. Um, I think they went ahead with Ashwin. Uh, Probably many people would have wanted Bishnoi in the side, but Ashwin, I'm not really against that. He's been brilliant since the T20 World Cup last year. Um the thing that really was surprise was the standbys. Like, Shami makes a comeback. He's in the standbys. He's also in the squad for Australia and South Africa. Shreyas Iyer is also there in the standby. So, I think in case of injury, I hope that doesn't happen. But in case of injury, Shreyas Iyer will come in Australia. He's not had a lot of match practice. So I think these two are the more, surprise selections, though they are in the standbys, but yeah, predictable 15 and yeah.
So let's go through the squad as it stands then. So Rohit Sharma, captain, of course. KL Rahul, vice
Yeah.
captain, which they weren't going to change that at the last minute, were they? He has been the vice captain. He will continue to be the vice captain. Virat Kohli, Suryakumar Yadav, Deepak Hooda, Rishabh Pant. That's an interesting one. Dinesh Karthik as the backup keeper slash finisher. Hardik Pandya, Ashwin, Yuzi Chahal, Akshar Patel. Bumrah is back, of course, following his injury. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Harshal Patel back from injury as well, and Arshdeep Singh
Yep.
as your other death bowling option in there as well. And the standby players, you mentioned Shreyas Iyer, Mohammad Shami, Ravi Bishnoi, and Deepak Chahar as well. The batting, let's talk batting first. So Shreyas Iyer, the only batter on that reserve list. Were there any others that maybe were unlucky, in your opinion, to miss out entirely?
I think Sanju Samson just had to be there, but realistically speaking, he wasn't going to be picked. Selectors haven't really favored him. I have no idea why. I think Sanju Samson, he's good against pace. Rohit Sharma recently also said that Sanju Samson would be the X factor in Australia, and they are looking at him for the T20 World Cup. He said this a few months ago. That's not to be very unfortunate for him, and yeah, it's uh, just
Well, look, he's averaging this year in T20
yeah,
internationals 44. He's striking in the 140s as
yeah,
well. When you compare that with say, Rishabh Pant's entire T20 international career of 51 matches and a strike rate of 123, and just never really looks like the T20 player that we all expected him to be. 51 matches, it's a pretty decent sample size, that as well. Yeah, it is harsh to leave somebody like a Samson out. And obviously the rejuvenation and, the comeback of Dinesh Karthik in recent times has sort of put a further nail in that coffin as far as this World Cup is concerned for Sanju Samson. But he can count himself unlucky because the form has been there, hasn't it?
Yeah, and even in this year's IPL, he had a strike rate of in the 140s, early 150s, I think. In the middle overs, I was just looking at his numbers. Middle overs, he has a strike rate of 151, 152 in the last 2 seasons. So, just so brilliant and yeah, unlucky for him. Happy for Dinesh Karthik. Yesterday, he put out a tweet saying dreams to come true. He and Rohit Sharma are the only two players who played in 2007 and are now in the squad 15 years later. So, yeah, happy for Dinesh Karthik. Just hoping that Samson, hopefully in the next T20 World Cup at least, is a starter and he gets a chance then. He's still 27, so not like he still has time ahead of him. Yeah, hoping.
He does, yeah, but he's kind of reaching those peak years now, isn't he? So now would be the time to get him in, if ever. But you're right, there is plenty of time. The only concern with somebody like a Samson has been, and maybe not this year, but in previous years, is that, say take the IPL for example, he'll come out like a steam train, just score 100 or get some decent half centuries and striking really well in the 150s and then fizzle out towards the end of the season. So there hasn't been that consistency from Sanju Samson in a competition like the IPL. That has been one criticism, but obviously in the last 12 months he seems to have turned his form round. Taking on the captaincy, of course, of his franchise has helped, and that extra responsibility seems to have added something to his game when he's out there in the middle as well. He knows there's a huge price on his wicket, and he's not just going to throw things away like he has done in the past, because it's not as if he's been batting badly when he's fizzled out towards the end of the season. He'll hit a couple of boundaries in his innings and look the class player that we all know that he is, and then just play one of those horrible shots and get himself out. Kind of like Rohit Sharma early on in his international career really was like as well, just so frustrating, where he'd get those starts and then just throw it away with a stupid shot which wasn't necessary. And that's been the Sanju Samson way of recent times. So let's hope he can continue that consistency and force his way back into the international setup at some point. He's not going to be there down under in Australia, and very different conditions, of course. Not a lot of the players who star in the IPL and players we've talked about as potentials have that much experience playing in Australia in white ball cricket. The guys that are in the squad do, the likes of Rohit and KL and Virat, and Rishabh Pant's been down there, of course, as well. Maybe slight concerns about Suryakumar Yadav. You feel could bat on any surface anywhere in the world, just the way he's playing. Deepak Hooda, Dinesh Karthik's obviously been everywhere in the world, but Deepak Hooda and the short ball, Hardik Pandya, and the short ball and those quick bouncy pitches, do you think that could be perhaps an issue in that middle order?
Yeah, and also, it's just that India have a proper top six. Like, who is number 7? Who bats at number 7? So, Huda and Hardik Pandya, they have their struggles, and if they are really struggling, who will India turn to then? The top, there will be Dinesh Karthik, I think, but then after that, with Jadeja not there also, the balance is totally thrown off the table. Will Akshar Patel bat at number 7? But then he's not really the number 7 kind of a batter. So, like the top 6 batting is still fixed. Hardik Pandya will be there despite all his struggles. But then, it's just the number 7 who comes in at number 7, and does India have the option to go in with six bowling options? And if they do, like, what will the 11 be like? I think that's the the squad was kind of expected, but what the 11 will be now is the main dilemma, because with Jadeja not there, in conditions that don't have spin, I don't think Akshar Patel will be the number one spinner. So probably it'll be Chahel. Uh, but then, the batting will be till number 6. So, I think that's the main tricky thing for India now going ahead.
Yeah, guess it's got to be the batters who get the runs,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to be relying on those lower order batters in that kind of situation when you haven't quite got that depth. And that will be the key. It's good to see some of them hitting form in the Asia Cup ahead of the World Cup as well. Virat
Yeah.
Kohli in particular, of course, Sky continuing his fabulous form. KL Rahul is a concern though, isn't he? He had that one, wouldn't even say great innings or good innings. It would be a decent innings where, what was it, 28 off 20 or something. That was it, really. That was the second Pakistan game, wasn't it, in the Asia Cup, which India went on to lose.
And the thing with
looked okay, but just didn't look the player other than that.
Yeah, the thing with KL Rahul is, over the last 2-3 years, his IPL performances, his average was in the 50s, strike rate was 120 odd. Yet, he made the India 11 because his strike rate in T20Is was higher. It was in the 140s. So, he still made the India 11. But now we've seen how he's going in. We saw how he went in the Asia Cup, and the question remains: will that IPL form come into the India setup also? Like, you don't want him to bat the way he does in the IPL. Probably it's kind of, he's been doing that in the IPL for so many years now, and that approach could seep into the Indian setup also, which we saw is happening in the Asia Cup, and that's that's one major issue he has to work on.
I would really love, I don't love any players being dropped, but I would love to see Virat at the top of the order. I know everyone's going to say, "Oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon," but I have talked about this before. In 2016, when he was in his prime form in T20 cricket, scored those 400s in the IPL season, of course, for RCB. He was opening the innings. That's where he needs to be, particularly now at this stage of his career where, he's still got the power game once he gets in and he can clear the ropes and stuff, but likes to get himself set, play proper cricket shots early on, get him up there, get him in the power play, and not when an early wicket falls, but when there's no wickets on the board, get him out there, let him play his proper shots, find the gaps, and have Rohit at the other end doing what he does and, taking the attack to the bowlers in the way that he has always done, but particularly more recently as well. He's sort of upped it a couple of gears in T20 cricket and, goes out there with that real intent as well. So that takes the pressure of somebody like Kohli early on. And then you can bring in Sky in his preferred position of number 3, where he's batted for so long for the Mumbai Indians with so much success in the IPL. And then that gives you more flexibility down the order. You could even play KL down the order if you needed to. I personally wouldn't do that. And he's a good reserve opener to have if something happens to one of the other batters and you need to shuffle things around. But it just gives you so much more flexibility. When you've got that top 3 set and you've got somebody like KL who's not in great form, eating up deliveries at the start of the innings, it's not good for the morale of the side. It's not good for the intensity. It's not good for this new brand of cricket, which India have promised that they're going to play and have threatened to play on occasions. Did it against England earlier this year. Didn't quite always do it in the Asia Cup, but that's the way they want to play, and they can't play that way when they've got KL Rahul at the top of the order. So I'd love to see Virat up there. There's the school of thought that Rishabh Pant, if he's going to play, he has to play as an opener as well. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think that's too radical for this Indian setup. So if that's not going to happen, Kohli has to bat at number 1 or 2. And I think that's the best way. That's India's best chance of putting big runs on the board and winning that World Cup.
Also, Kohli off late he has his struggles against spin. So if he comes in after the power play overs, if KL Rahul and has eaten some deliveries with not a lot of runs on the board. So then he will come in the middle over. Kohli will come in the middle overs when the spinners are possibly bowling, and then he's going to struggle to not only get under their skin, but also to rotate the strike rate, and the pressure will ultimately then increase on India. So he still is decent against pace. So yeah, just get him out against the Pacers early on, give him the first 2-3 overs to get his eye in, and then he can go, and by the time the spinners come in, he will be a little more relaxed, and which is what happened even against Afghanistan when he scored the 100. He opened the innings, and so when Mujib and Rashid Khan came in, he had his eye in, and he was, just taking the singles, and then he went for his shot against his spinners also. So yeah, it wouldn't be a bad move. But then KL Rahul again, vice captain. I realistically don't see that happening. We can have our wishes, but yeah, he is going to open, and that's how it'll be.
Yeah, you'd think so,
Yeah.
but you never know. You never know. I mean, look, I will say one final thing about Kohli getting that 100. We've talked about that, and it was brilliant, and we all loved it. And he's back, and 71's on the board, 72's probably incoming at some point soon. Maybe not the T20 World Cup. Look, we weren't expecting him to get his 71st in a T20 match, but he did, and hopefully he just goes and finds that form which has deserted him for the last couple of years. But all these fans of different countries saying, "Oh well, he did it 2 matches too late," or whatever. I mean, he's Mohammad Rizwan might be the top run scorer in the Asia Cup, but
Yeah.
I mean, come on, if you score a run a ball, that's not going to win you any matches. And rightly so, he was getting criticised for the way he played in the final, just scoring a marginally over a run a ball and just eating up those deliveries in that kind of run chase when you're chasing 170 odd. You can't do that. So Kohli was the best batter in the Asia Cup by far, and was doing it in other games as well. Who scores international T20 hundreds back to back? It just doesn't happen. So to score one is rare. To score a couple is really good, and but it's not going to happen in the same tournament. So the fact he was getting those half centuries, playing his role really well, hitting the ball nicely, he was in form for the whole Asia Cup. And this is the same Afghanistan side, by the way. Okay, yes, they were out of the competition by that point, and so were India as well. It has to be added. So, lack of motivation for both sides, really, you could say. But this is the same Afghanistan side that 24 hours ago, before that 100, nearly beat Pakistan in a very low run chase as well, and bowled brilliantly. And they bowled pretty similarly, actually, against Kohli and against India. But, slightly different conditions, different stadium, of course, different pitch. But they just came against, one of the greatest of all time. And that was that. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Everyone who's giving him stick, he's the GOAT, and will continue to churn out runs for India. Just before we move on to the bowling, just a reminder: 99.94, a lot more than just this podcast. We've got Sri Lanka, we've got West Indies, we've got England, we've got South Africa, all on the 99.94 network. Go and check them out as well. We've got Red Inca with Jared Kimber. We've also got Double Century as well, looking at the history of the game. You can find all of this on the 99.94 app, or on YouTube, or via your usual podcast provider. So lots of content worth checking out on our network. But we will continue talking about India, the T20 World Cup squad. So we've talked about the batting. We think they're going to go with the tried and tested method at the top of the order in particular. No Jadeja, of course. So that all-rounders slot, obviously Hardik Pandya will play, but then who's going to come in? Is it going to be an Ashwin? Is it going to be an Akshar Patel? It's Australia. Ashwin's got the variations and the subtlety and all that kind of stuff. Does it depend on the opposition? There's the obsession about Ashwin to left-handers. Does that come into it? are we going to see a lot of switching between the two? Because Yuzi Chahal, you would assume, would play all the matches as your number one spinner. Is it a case then of just checking out who you're playing against, how many left-handers, right-handers are in the side, and based on that, you pick either Akshar Patel or Ravi Ashwin?
Yeah, I think that's why Ashwin even edged ahead of Bishnoi to make the squad. Both of them, turn the ball the same way. So probably Australia have favored wrist spinners in the past, but because of variety, they went ahead with Ashwin, I would say, and also because he brings in that batting angle, can bat. We've seen it in the IPL, so I think that's the reason he went ahead. They went ahead with Ashwin and not Bishnoi. And yeah, I think it's going to be a toss up between what the opposition is like, how many left-handers there. I think that's why Ashwin even came in against Sri Lanka in the Asia Cup, because there were three left-handers in the middle order. So Bishnoi, even though he had that great game against Pakistan, he didn't play, and Ashwin came in for the very next match. So I think that's how, yeah, it's going to be a horses for courses kind of a policy. And yeah, I don't think they'll play the same 11 throughout the tournament. It's a few picks will be based on what the opposition is like.
Yeah, you'd think so, particularly with the spinners as well. I think they'd prefer to play Ashwin if they could. Just the way they approach these big tournaments is, there's a bit of fear, isn't there? Let's face it, there is a bit of fear. They're not comfortable with going in with the, maybe not untested, but they want as much experience in the side as possible, which sometimes is a great thing. Other times, in T20 cricket in particular, you need to be bold sometimes and just take those risks and think outside the box. And the fact they haven't done it in the build up to this World Cup just suggests that they'll try and pick Ashwin if they can, but if there's a real lack of left-handers in the opposition side, then they'll probably go with Akshar Patel for the odd match as well. From the fast bowling point of view, it's great to see. I mean, it looks so much better on paper, doesn't it, as well? Just looking at it, Jasprit Bumrah. I mean, just his name, forget Harshal Patel, but just the fact that Bumrah is back, what he offers you with the extra pace, just the skill, the guile, the fact he can take wickets in the power play, he can bowl in the middle, he can bowl at the death. He's the best bowler and the fast bowler in the world, isn't he, at the moment? In terms of all-round capability, all formats. He's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and India really did miss him in the Asia Cup. They would still get the early wickets, but in the death, like Bhuvi, one of the most experienced pacers in the side, went for plenty of runs while bowling in the death. It was only Arshdeep Singh who just made his debut a few, I think against England, he made his debut. So yeah, it was only him who was taking on the responsibility, so to say. So just name of Bumrah already makes the team so much more stronger. And it'll be interesting.
And it means Bhuvi doesn't have to bowl at the death if Bhuvi plays. Of course,
I think he's.
Now that's going to be another debate, isn't it?
What do you think the bowling? I think probably they'll go in with three seamers and one spinner.
Three specialist
three
seamers,
specialist
right? Not
seamers along with Hardik. So who do you think is going to play? My picks are Arshdeep because of the left-handed angle and because of his death bowling skills. Bhuvi because he still is very decent up front, and Bumrah obviously. So do you get in Harshal, or what is your thing?
I think they go with Bhuvi. Maybe they might switch it up for the odd match and bring in Harshal Patel. Just maybe against slightly weaker opposition, depending on what happens in the tournament and how things go, just to get him some game time out there as well, because you never know for the latter stages. They might need him if there's any injuries or anything like that. Bumrah and Bhuvi will probably open the bowling, and so they should. Bumrah always, and Bhuvi with the extra swing and seam that he gets early on. And I think those Australian pitches will suit him because he's not got the express pace, but he bowls good lengths and just that short of a length can be quite awkward on those bouncy pitches in Australia, especially with the movement as well. I think almost he's, in a way, saved himself ahead of this World Cup. He would have got picked in the squad,
Yeah.
but in terms of being a guaranteed starter, just the way he bowled in that final game against Afghanistan in the Asia Cup, and to take 5 for 4, okay, it's end of the tournament, it's a dead rubber game, but just the way he bowled, he just found that extra bit of zip which we've always associated with him, and he's been capable of this throughout his whole career, of just ripping teams apart early on with the ball swinging and seaming like it was. And that was Bouvier at his best, and if he can bowl anywhere near that kind of line and length and get that kind of movement in Australia, he will be more than just a handful. And Harshal is a very good backup as well. And you're right, Arshdeep, brilliant death bowler, brilliant first change as well, coming in just after the power play, you'd feel. If things don't go well in the power play, though, then who are you turning to? Because Arshdeep on those pitches, not got the best pace. Ball won't be new, and it's only going to swing for 2 or 3 overs max. So he comes in, the ball's not swinging, it's early, power play's still on. I don't think that's a good option. So who do they then turn to? Is it going to be Hardik Pandya? Because he can go for a few as well, or do they go with spin early on? It obviously depends on the match, on the pitch, and all that kind of stuff. But there is that little bit of extra lack of pace, isn't there? There's Bumrah, Hardik can crank it up as well, but then you're struggling for that extra pace. And in Australia, maybe you need that.
Yeah, that's we spoke about this a few episodes ago. Do you think they missed a trick by not, backing Umran Malik for a few more games? Like Avesh Khan played over 15 T20Is, didn't really do that well, to play 15 T20Is, be in the Asia Cup squad. Do you think Umran Malik, with that extra pace, should have been given a longer rope? He just played 3 T20Is versus Ireland, and he went for plenty. He had an economy of 12.5. But we have seen, like, on his day in the IPL, he's just unplayable. So do you think
100%. 100% I would have had him in there for longer. I would have picked him in the Asia Cup. I would have paid Dale Steyn £1 million or dollars or whatever he wants, because he was his mentor at SRH. And you saw that when Dale Steyn got a hold of him towards the middle of that IPL and mentored him 1-to-1 and really told him what to do, you could see he hit his straps and he was taking those wickets regularly, wasn't going for as many runs. And Steyn was the happiest man in the world every time the camera panned to him in the dugout as well. You could tell they've got a really good working relationship. Obviously, Steyn, one of the best to ever do it, with high pace and skill. And 400 odd test wickets at 21 or 22, whatever it is, outstanding. You don't get many better people in the world to tell a fast bowler what to do and to mentor them from such an early age. They should have paid Dale Steyn to come as a consultant, just work with Umran Malik. If you don't want to work with the rest of the guys, they've got their other bowling coach and all the rest of the coaching staff. Just get him in with Umran Malik for the Asia Cup, for the World Cup, and just give him everything in that build-up as well. Just play him in all the warm-up games. Because, if you've got that devastating pace and you can be accurate with your pace, the batters hate that. They absolutely hate that. They fear it. They're pissing in their pants at the other end, to use, I could have chosen better words, but that's literally what they're doing. They're scared. Nobody wants to face somebody bowling at 95 miles an hour, and that is what he does. This is Australia we're talking about as well. So even if he bowls 90 miles an hour and gets his length right, he's going to hit some people. He's going to get people diving out of the way, jumping out of the way. They might get the odd edge for 4 or 6 or whatever. There might be a little bit of that going on as well. But if he can hit his lines and his lengths, which the only way he's going to do that is by playing more. So they missed a trick by just not having him involved after Ireland.
And you spoke of
it's a shame. It's a shame because he would have been devastating.
And you spoke of being bold and taking those like uh, picking players, just based on how lethal they can be, and not just based on experience. And Umran Malik could have been that, just that X factor. And yeah, he's not had a lot of experience, he's not played a lot, he has been expensive. But yeah, just be bold, and sometimes that's what gets you over the line in world events. And probably it is this this cautiousness and being extra careful in world events which has maybe held India back in the last few events. They've done so well in the league stages to reach the finals, semi-finals consistently, but just this lack of X factor, or taking that extra punt, or just being bold, has probably let them down. And yeah, the new era, they say, the new approach, but probably it's the same squad you see at the 2021 World Cup squad, and this squad, so 9 or 10 players are the same. So where is that risk? Like, what's
Yeah.
different? Yeah, there's Huda there, but
And
yeah.
you look at Pakistan, right? We talk about high pace bowling, and when they brought in Shoaib Akhtar into the side, yeah, the game was different. There wasn't a T20s, it was all the ODIs, and the way ODIs were played were different. It was 1999, and they weren't smashing it from the off, but they took a risk on this raw guy who could just bowl quick. And at
Yeah.
times he was expensive, but look at how that turned out. And even now with Pakistan, they had the injury to Shaheen. So what do? They think, all right, screw it, we'll just go all out pace. And
Mm.
they they went a bit extreme. They picked three
Yeah.
bowlers who bowled at very high pace, and you can't have three of those in a side because they're all fairly raw at international level. Okay, Harris Ralph's got more experience than the other two and has played a lot of franchise cricket and is a great death bowler, and he's got the skill of the slower balls and all that. But then you've got Naseem Shah and Mohammad Hasnain, who, fairly Naseem was completely untested at this level. Hasnain fairly untested at this level as well. And they can either be hot or cold. There's no in
Mm.
between. They can either be on it, like Naseem was in that first spell against India in that first game, taking the early wickets and difficult to score off, just getting in his groove, or he can be really expensive as well, and the ball's flying everywhere to the boundary. Same with Hasnain as well. They went a bit extreme. So, India could do that. It's not as if India don't have the paces. They could go with Umran Malik, Navdeep Saini. They could bring in Umesh Yadav. Then you got Jasprit Bumrah, who bowls 90 mile an hour as well. So they could do that similar sort of approach. You can see why they haven't gone completely down that route. But although Bumrah's quick, he's more
Mm.
than just a quick bowler. He's the most skillful bowler in the world at the moment, in my opinion, anyway, and in the opinions of many. And Shaheen's probably quite close when he's in his groove as well as a fast bowler. But you've got that one place where you can afford to
Yeah.
have that extra guy who just goes in there, tries to rattle a few cages, occasionally might be expensive, but if you can get him the right kind of mentor, the right kind of, build up to a tournament like this, just playing more matches, getting one-to-one coaching, getting all that mentorship from somebody like Dale Steyn or somebody similar who's been there and done it, missing a
Mm.
massive, massive, massive trick. When have India ever had somebody who
Yeah.
can bowl? Forget 95 miles an hour. What was his quickest
I
delivery
think
in the
153.
IPL in terms of miles an hour? It's like
Yeah.
98 miles an hour or something. That is extreme
Mm.
pace. I mean, very few in the history of the game have ever bowled that quick.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable that you're just sitting this guy back in India and telling him, yeah, we might look at you next time, but you're not even on the reserves list. I mean,
Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
baffles me.
exactly.
Baffles me.
The point of going back to Shami just makes no sense to me. A few months ago, it was like the selectors have told him that his T20I, he's no longer in the T20I plans. And then to go back to Shami, pick him for the Australia South Africa series, is just going back. And we know that Shami, he's not the death bowler that you want him to be. He is the power play. Like, you think he picks wickets in the power play, but this IPL, he had a strike rate of 22. So in the power play, so he went a lot of matches without picking a wicket in the power play also. So it's just going back, and it makes no sense. At least if you don't have Umran in your 15, at least you have him in the standby list. You could have given him a few games, have him there, and just so that he bowls in Australia, he'll be with the team, he'll learn a lot more, and then going forward you can get him in your side. Because going back to Shami in T20s, just I don't know, the selectors,
He's not a
yeah,
T20
yeah,
bowler. He's just not.
yeah, it's just strange. It's like Asia Cup. In the Asia Cup, the bowling was kind of like I'm forgetting that word. Like uh, came apart, sort of. Yeah,
Underwhelming.
so
Yeah,
to
it
say.
was. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
So they were
It
like,
was the wheels
yeah,
came off,
yeah,
and that's why the
yeah,
Twitter world and the social media world. Oh, Mohammed
yeah,
Shami,
yeah,
we need you. Well, if it was a test match, yeah. If it was an ODI,
yeah.
maybe. But he's not the
Yeah,
answer, because he can get
yeah.
smashed apart at the end of the innings as well. People were complaining about Bhuvi
Hmm.
going for 14 off and over, 19 off and over, and this is in the 19th over of those two games. Shami has got the
Hmm.
capability of the same as well. He's not a good death bowler at
Yeah.
all, and never
And
has
then
been.
instead of rectifying it, then you're again going to someone experienced, just for to give a sense of security in the team that we have experience. Which, yeah, again, like we said, the lack of taking a risk sometimes has affected them in world events. And I just hope that, yeah, Shami is not in the squad, but just overall going back to him just shows the mindset which the selectors and even the coach captain have. So yeah, it's bizarre. And
It's like when Jofra Archer first qualified to play for England, right? He was taking the difference with Archer is that he was playing franchise cricket around the world and doing well and taking wickets, and he looked dangerous, and he got into his groove. But franchise cricket is T20 cricket,
yeah.
right? And they wanted to pick him ahead of the 50 over World Cup in
Mm.
2019. Never played for England, didn't qualify until about a month and a
Yeah.
half before the tournament. And they had that one warm-up series against Pakistan. They had a really difficult decision. England had been building this side from 2015. They'd gone to number one in the world after being the worst white ball team in history, probably. They were rubbish, out of the
Mm.
top sides. They were absolutely rubbish for years and years and years. England did very little in white ball cricket. They had the odd good game, good tournament, whatever, but never won anything. Just didn't have a clue about anything, really. Owen Morgan comes in as captain, sets up this whole new plan of how we're going to play cricket, gets the right personnel in. And David Willey, who was a massive part of that success in getting England to number one in the world, is all of a sudden dropped in place of Jofra Archer. That's a risk
Mm.
as it is as well, team morale and all that. But then you've got this guy Archer who bowls quick, who can go for runs as well, because the quicker you are, edges fly and all that kind of stuff. But has had some success in domestic franchise competitions. Got to be said, he's never played international cricket. He's done it in county cricket. County cricket, the standard's rubbish anyway, as we all know, especially these days. So never tested at that level, but they backed him. They gave him the whole Pakistan series in the build up to that World Cup, and they just backed their guy, and he ends up winning them the World Cup with
Mm.
that super
Yeah.
over at the end as well. So, I'm not saying Umran Malik is in the same class as Jofra Archer or anything like that, but very similar kind of cricketers coming onto the scene, raw, lots of pace, potential to take a lots of wicket, has had IPL success, as it seems like he's got a really good attitude as well, to wanting to get better, to learn all the time as well. And you could see that with the relationship with Steyn. Just give him some
Mm.
backing, get him to play some games, like you say. If he's not in this squad, put him in the reserves, play some
Mm.
practice games, build that experience then ahead of the next World Cup, or wherever it might be. But they
Mm.
haven't given him any kind of run
Yeah.
up into this Asia Cup or the World Cup. It just
Mm.
baffles me, to be honest. And I don't know how much of that is to do with Rohit Sharma or Rahul Dravid, or it's just the selection committee, or if they've seen something, they don't like his attitude. But he's a young man. These things can be worked on. Just you've got all that talent and that raw
This,
pace.
yeah.
Use it. Just
This
use
is
it.
controversial, probably, but I think if Kohli was there, he would have had Umran Malik in the squad. His eyes literally just, used to go like uh, become bigger every time Umran Malik was playing. I remember there's this match against RCB and SRH, and Umran Malik was kept on bowling fast, and Virat Kohli, like they kept zooming into Virat Kohli, and his eyes were literally like, wow. And I think that if Kohli was still the captain, Umran Malik would not in the squad maybe, but he would have been around the Indian setup because he loves fast bowlers. The fast bowling revolution in Indian cricket, Test cricket, is all down to Kohli, and I think Malik would have had um, a scope of being in the side if Kohli was there. I can be wrong, but that's how like
No,
yeah.
I think you've got a fair point there, because he was more of a risk taker with
Hmm.
some of the selections that he made as well. And we saw Rishabh Pant coming into the side under his leadership and all that kind of stuff as well, which was seen as a risk at the time. They could have gone with any one of several safe
Yeah.
options as a keeper who could just bat normally, but he wanted to think outside the box and go with somebody like a Rishabh in Test cricket as well, which was
He loved
massive at the
Prasidh
time in
Krishna.
2018.
Yeah, he loved Prasidh Krishna after the IPL. I think a few seasons ago he said, "I love Prasidh Krishna. He should be in the team." And then he got him, and he got a extended run, and he's still in the ODI setup at least. So he loved those fast bowlers, and
Yeah, but it won't be, and we
yeah.
won't see Umran Malik, and unless I don't know what happens if like two bowlers get injured, or
I
you'll have to
hope not.
draft
I
somebody
hope
else
not.
in,
It's
or
okay.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we don't want any injuries, so we want everyone fit and firing, and hopefully India will return with the cup. It's been a long time, hasn't it? It's pre-IPL that they won the T20 World
Or
Cup.
any cup,
It
so
wasn't
to
even
say.
called the T20
Any
World
World Cup,
Cup.
so to say. Men's, women's, any. After
Yeah,
2011? Yeah,
2011
after that.
for the Men's World Cup, then 2013. Did Champions Trophy count?
World Cups, I think so. 2011, been 11 years.
Let's count the Champions Trophy. Let's give us. It's an ICC event,
Yeah.
isn't it? It was beat England in England. That was actually a T20 match, if you remember the final,
Yeah.
when it rained all day in
Yeah.
Birmingham and they had a 20 over a side game in that ODI. So that's the last time they won on the big stage, really, and it was under Dhoni. Kohli, wasn't meant to be for him. Can Rohit add another T20 winners medal to his cabinet, along with Dinesh Karthik as well? We'll wait and see. We'll obviously preview a lot more nearer the time as well ahead of that one. And we'll see how the squad and the players shape up in the build-up to those games as well. South Africa coming to India very soon. I think they've got a few days at home. Flying home today, I believe, from England. The Test squad, who quite a few are involved in the white ball stuff as well. So they'll be heading to India in a few days, and we'll see how all that goes as well. We'll be here, of course, several times a week on the 99.94 network. Do download the app. Find us on YouTube and via your usual podcast provider. We'll be back very soon. But for now, thanks for joining us, and goodbye.